So first, just tell us who you are, and what it is that you're doing here. What is it that you do?
I'm David Johnson. I'm a drama therapist and a psychologist. Lived in New Haven, Connecticut for about 50 years, and I've been part of the founding group of the profession of drama therapy. I have a theater and psychology degree from Yale University and got involved in drama therapy basically through my interest in improv, which I emphasized in my college career and afterwards, and I've always loved improvisation and have developed a method of drama therapy called developmental transformations that is based on kind of a free play / improvisational approach to therapy. And the approach is used in all kinds of work with children and elderly, clinical populations, normal people, on the street, in different settings. And that's who I am, and I've always had a passion for theater and improv in particular.
Okay, so something that's really fascinated me that I'd like to just start off with is your work with veterans. It seemed like that was a big part of how you developed the work that you've done. Tell me how PTSD with military veterans has made, sort of influenced that work that you've done.
My career began working with long-term psychiatric patients, and then I had many years working with the elderly in various nursing homes, but then I had a 17-year career at VA hospital in New Haven, where I worked with veterans with general psychiatric conditions, and then eventually with PTSD, working with Vietnam veterans and Gulf War veterans and their families. And we used many different approaches to their treatment, but one of the ones that we used consistently was drama therapy. We put on plays with them that they created. They were improvisationally created plays that then were kind of set and then rehearsed. And then we used developmental transformations with them, both individually and in groups. And so PTSD became my specialty. In 1997, I left the VA and have been running the Post-Traumatic Stress Center in New Haven for ever since. And we work with the general population, children, anyone who's been traumatized, including veterans, and also using drama therapy with them. The veterans were combat veterans from Vietnam. I began working there in 1979 before the DSM included PTSD. And then PTSD was identified, and we discovered over the next couple of years that almost half of the veterans that were being treated for psychotic conditions did not have psychotic conditions, and that it was post-traumatic stress disorder, and that instead of having hallucinations for which they were treated with antipsychotic medications, these were in fact flashbacks. And so I was part of the original group, had the honor of working in the National Center for PTSD, where some of the early neuropsychological and neuroscience studies took place on my unit, where just the shock of realizing that all of these veterans had been mistreated, not intentionally, for no purpose. So that was like a profound shakeup of everything I knew. And I think that's where I developed a commitment to helping other people who are being misdiagnosed, from children who are diagnosed with ADHD when they don't have ADHD. They actually are suffering from trauma, to the elderly who are diagnosed with dementia when they don't have dementia. They have PTSD, to women that are diagnosed with borderline personality disorder or bipolar when they don't have those. They're basically are responding to their sexual assault and rape that took place that they haven't talked about. So it's just a pervasive, critically important area, and that I've dedicated my life to ever since.
Well, I mean, the work that you've done, I mean, just to see, this morning you talk and a little bit about just the first instance of it is pretty amazing to see how far that it's come. I mean, you've pioneered an entire field here. And sort of, I really liked how you then said, and now I'm handing it off. I was young, you're still young, but you realize that there are people that are in their 20s now too that have these fresh ideas and the energy and all that. So I really like that. Are you at all worried about, I guess, inexperienced hands, or especially like when we're talking about applied improvisation, which isn't drama therapy, it's not a licensed practice. There seems like there's a lot of people out there who are just like, oh, I love this improv workshop I went to last weekend. Now I'm a corporate coach, or are you a little bit worried about that? I mean, what do you think about the field in terms of the dangers going forward?
Well, I'm not really particularly worried. Obviously, bad things can happen with the most highly trained people. And some of the worst ethics violations are being conducted by people, particularly men in their 50s, who have been highly trained and very experienced and are having sex with their clients. So, that's actually more dangerous than a bunch of young people doing improv, to be honest. I grew up, I was a 60s person. I grew up in the 60s. I hit it perfectly right. I was a teenager. It was the time that Second City and Viola Spolin kind of kicked off the whole theater game, improv world. I went to high school in Minneapolis where Dudley Riggs' Brave New Workshop, and I went to that. I fell in love with improv there. So improv has been around, since the late 50s and the early 60s. And then it seemed to be sort of just a little kind of a side thing. I was developing an improv way of working therapeutically. But, in the last 20, 25 years, despite the world kind of falling apart, improv has really had another wave. And, Wait, Don't Tell Me, obviously, and so many other kind of improv, stand-up comedy. Many, many people all over the place are doing things that only a few people did years before. And a lot of it's bad improv, this kind of a thing. But the impulse of improv is to face the next presenting moment with no plan. And this is what it leads to therapy, which is that we, as you noted, each of us is thrown into this world and we imagine we have a plan for the next moment, as if we can predict it. But there is no way to predict the next moment. And if you really are aware of that, it's terrifying. So improv is a way of kind of dealing with the absolute lack of ability to predict the next moment and throw yourself into it anyway, without a script. And DVT, developmental transformations, is a way of basically kind of illuminating the scripts that people are using to deal with the next moment, and how ridiculous that is, because of course we have to live with some degree of stability. So we predict what's happening, we prepare for it, and we go through our daily rituals. And we repeat them over and over again until we are finally tired of them, and then we divorce them because we're tired of the repetition. So in DVT, it's training people to basically let go of these made-up scripts that you've created to stabilize your experience and fall into the next moment and make it up on the spot. And there's got a lot of deep roots to clowning, relationship to stand-up, to kind of entertainment improv. And the whole applied improv movement is really extending itself beyond that into applications for education, for therapy, personal growth, and just plain fun. And anyone who I sometimes will stand on the street and look at people walking by, and people don't look happy. They're walking around, they've got their briefcase, they got their overcoat on, they're on their way to work, they're on their way from a meeting, something like that. And everyone's walking around too serious. And there's no reason to be. And it's not fun. And it's hard to see somebody actually playing on their way to work. And so we've taken DVT onto the street. The flash mob movement, that's a lot of fun. Let's maximize with our short time here by doing something fun. And there's nothing more fun than kind of meeting the next presenting moment in your life with a certain amount of delight or awe and occasionally alarm, because we can't predict what's coming. And that's what living is about, is feeling that rawness. So DVT does it in a particular way. It's not exactly the same. We can get into that if you want to, but it's based on the idea that it is, when you're thrown into the world at birth, what a shock, okay? Not expected to be out here, okay? And you have no capacity to know what's going on, and so you got to, you don't know how to make it up, so people tell you what's going on, and they tell you your name, they tell you who you are, they tell you everything about you, and you take it all in, and it only takes you 30 years and a lot of therapy to understand that most of that was incorrect. But at least it's helpful along the way to be told what's going on, the names of all the capitals in the states, the names of all the countries. Thank you for doing this. The stoplight, how to walk down the street and clothe yourself and everything like that. The problem is that this is true all the way through life, and the more that we can reveal that, the better. All improv, even entertainment improv, like you might see on TV or whatever, is fueled by that excitement. The excitement of we don't know what's about to happen, and somebody just made up something that seems to fit. And it's a beautiful, delightful experience. And in therapy, working with people who've been traumatized, working with people who are depressed, having them sort of have the courage, the bravery to stand up to that present moment and to go, hey, why not? Is beautiful. And when they get that, it builds that sense of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned trauma as a kind of a reason why people might not be able to play in life. But maybe for some of the people that wouldn't be diagnosed as being traumatized, what are some of the other reasons why all those people are walking down the street so unhappy and serious and sort of taking life too seriously? What causes that in people?
Great question. Well, people, if you haven't noticed, people do take themselves too seriously. And they take their ideas too seriously. In fact, pretty much everything has been made up. And it was made up through some kind of exercise of power. So, for example, take longitude in the world. It just so happens, oddly, that the zero longitude, which are the vertical lines that are abstract, that help us navigate around the world, goes through Greenwich, England. And I don't know if you can guess which country was dominant at the time that system was involved. It was Great Britain. Amazing. And the telephone codes, the US is code number 1. And I don't know if you want to make up, understand which country was dominant at the time that system. Well, the US. So who made your name? You didn't. Somebody named you. And you can know who named you by changing your name and see who gets upset. And it's somebody else. All the names of all the states, all the names of all the people, all the concepts that we do, id, ego, superego, everything, these are all made up by somebody. So the whole thing is made up, which is really another way of saying everything is theater and everything is drama. And people actually take these for real. And the reason for that is that if everything is made up, then what's reality? And who am I? And these are questions that are very hard and anxiety to answer and anxiety provoking. So the idea is that the world is highly unstable, things are changing, it's hard to determine what's going on, and that we need to agree on things to calm ourselves down and stabilize our experience of the world. And so that leads then to people actually becoming serious, and because people argue with each other about what's real, then you have to become more serious. So for example, if somebody says, actually, this is not Pennsylvania, this is Wisconsin. And you go, no, this is Pennsylvania. We're in Philadelphia, this is, excuse me. And so you get into an argument about these things and you take it very passionately. Or if you're a mental health professional, you've got some theory that somebody made up and then you believe it's really true. So it helps to commit to the economy, for people to actually get dressed and go to work and work. You want people to think it's real and serious. So there's just huge efforts to make us all believe that what's happening is real and serious, and so we walk around like that's true. And I'm not saying that there isn't a reality. There is a reality, but it's just that we've made it up, and that's like going to a play. We do a program in the public schools where we've made up a legend that's therapeutically helpful, and it's related to trauma. And we've had teachers tell us they're concerned that we've made up something and that we're telling a lie to the kids. And, and we say, no, it's not a lie, it's a legend, it's a theatrical thing. And they're still concerned that we're telling a lie to the kids. And this is the thing, when you go to the theater, I've never gone to the theater and just before they begin, there's this disclaimer that comes out, please, we want to let you know that what you're about to see is not true. And we know you would be very upset if you learned that what's going on has been made up and written, it's fiction, but we wanted to make sure you knew that. Nobody says that. You know that you're going to the theater, it's not true, it's been made up. That doesn't stop you from going to the theater. That's what we're going to the theater for, is to see something imaginative. So why not when you walk down the street? And so when we go, we take a developmental transformations troupe. We did this in Prague. We had 90 of us, and we went out into there's a big square in Prague. Prague is an extremely, extremely serious place. A lot of very negative things happened on the square in Prague. And so it's filled with a lot of serious people and then a lot of tourists that are there to see the serious things who are not actually having a lot of fun because the whole place is not a fun place. And so 90 of us came out onto the streets of Prague. We began playing with people, just sort of making stuff up, playing games, doing other kinds of things. It ended up with a huge, gigantic circle in the middle of Prague, 450, 500 people all lined up. People are running around, going through gauntlets, doing various things that they normally would not do, and because they wanted to. Didn't cost any money. It was ridiculous, but people had a great time. And you do this elsewhere. And improv troupes around the world are really bringing a lot of joy and delight to people in silly ways. Sometimes they're off, sometimes it's dumb. Stand-up, can be hysterical. It can also be, kind of abusive and a little bit too much swear words and this kind of a thing. So yes, there's all sorts of things that maybe not are perfect or anything like that. But the basic idea is to shake up us out of the boxes that we keep putting ourselves in. And people who come for therapy have essentially, sometimes I think of it this way, which is people have locked themselves into a box for safety. And then they feel, I'm locked in a box. Get me out. And so in DVT, we basically take our patient, has come to us locked in a box, think magicians here, and my job is to break and enter the box and to free the person. They have to hire me to break and enter their home. All right? So, of course, as we try to break and enter it, they resist because somebody's breaking into the box. So we then play with, excuse me, you've hired me to break and enter into this and free you from the box, but at the same time you're holding on to the box. So what do you want to do? So our job is to basically, and this does upset people in the mental health field, but in DVT what we're trying to do is actually destabilize the client. But not as a person, but destabilize the armor and the box that they put themselves in, and to allow them to question whether or not they want to continue that. There are some boxes you say, well, actually, I like that, and I'm going to keep that. But our job is to question it. And this gets to some things, where we depart a little bit from the Bible of improv, which would be one piece of it is yes and, meaning that any offer that's made, you say yes to, and then what else? And I would say that even though in general we're doing that, but in DVT we also do not do that. Part of it is not saying yes, we say no, this kind of a thing, and we problematize, we disrupt, we get in the way of some flow. Only we don't do that as a way of ending the improv, but then forcing the other person to come up with a new way of continuing. And we play with it. So in the end, it's a yes and. But along the way, we're interfering. And you have to be trained to do that. In particular, this is you need some particular training on this. You see, like in an entertainment-based improv, you don't want to mess up. You can't mess up the scene. You can't be arguing about where the door is. So you have to be cooperating together to make sure that you are creating consensual worlds. And of course the rule is that if somebody makes something up, which is your job is to make something up, obviously the other person has to see it and work with it. But in therapy, we're not entertaining anyone else. So we're here basically to interfere and disrupt this ongoing improv, but with the idea that we're going to continue the improv. That is, that we have to find a new way of cooperating around the breaking of the structure. And so strict improv people get a little alarmed about this sometimes because they see the blocking that goes on. But it's for a purpose, and it's something we would never do in any kind of when there was an audience and you needed to be able to sort of continue. There's a lot of clowning in DVT, and a lot of improv is a cousin of clowning. Clowning is different than improv in that, and most scholars have agreed to this, the clown is on stage but is not in the story. So the clown comes on stage and he is the naive entity, and he does not see, the thing that's about to fall on him, or he's going to get hit by a thing, or he's going to step on a piece of gum and he can't pick it up off of the thing. And then we laugh because he's the subject of the situation. That's very the opposite of stand-up. When the stand-up person's working with the audience, when the stand-up person's doing direct work with the audience, and the stand-up person is essentially going to be making fun of an audience member. And that also, so the audience member's not in the story. So the stand-up person asks them, where are you from? The person says that, and the stand-up person then makes a joke about where they're from, this kind of a thing. So in that case, the comedian is inside the story, whereas the clown is outside of the story. In DVT, there's no outside. We're both in the story. So the therapist is participating with the client in the play space or in the actual play. And that's very similar to many forms of entertainment-based improv where you've got two comedians working together. So they're both in it, and they're basically trying to play off each other and to cooperate with each other. Where the difference is in DVT is that we try to interfere with the cooperation sometimes. Because guess what? I don't know about you, I run across uncooperative people all the time. And in fact, I find many people are annoying. And I don't know if that's true for you, but that's been true for me. And so the question is, how do I handle an annoying person? So if I don't know how to handle an annoying person, one of the best ways is to have my therapist act like an annoying person. But not just a general annoying person, the kind of a person that I am annoyed by. So the therapist has to get to know you, has to get to know what's annoying you, and then has to present that to you. And unlike a real annoying person, who, if I do something to them because they're annoying, will retaliate in some manner, the therapist won't. The therapist will take the hit. The therapist will play back or come back at you with some new angle. So DBT is a little bit more like martial arts. In martial arts or sports, tennis, where you hire somebody to teach you, and they begin to spar with you in a very gentle way. And so, they do this and you block it and you learn to do that and your skills build. But then as that goes, they come at you a little bit harder. And then the master comes at you a little more of a surprise. And they come from the thing. Or the tennis coach hits you to your backhand. Then it hits it harder. Then hits it further. And then in karate, for example, to become a black belt, in the end, 3 people attack you. And that's how you learn karate. So in terms of interpersonal relationships, you need to have all sorts of problem people trying to get to know you. And so the therapist is going to be coming at you basically in ways that are testing you and challenging you, even though you've hired them to do this. And in that way, you learn how to handle complicated or intimate relationships. And it's not just antipathy, it's also intimacy, it's also love. One of the most threatening things for people is somebody comes close to you and says, I love you. And that terrifies a lot of people. So in our work, the therapist will be coming close to people and saying, enroll, you're really lovely, I'd love to be with you, I love you. Completely acting, and the client knows that you're acting, but feels terrified. And so what are you going to do about that? And so clients do things to protect themselves from something that many people would view as being good. And if you've been sexually abused, if you've been assaulted, that kind of approach can be very threatening. You meet somebody in the bar and the guy is really nice and he says, hey, you're cute, and what do you do, and this kind of a thing, and you get along really well, and it's raining outside, and he says, let me take you to your car, it's dark, and you allow him to do that, and you get in the car and he begins to kiss you, and then pretty soon he demands something of you and you say no, and he ignores that. The next time you're at a bar and somebody says something nice to you, you're going to have a reaction to that. So you'll be triggered by actually a nice person. So in an improv, if you're presented with your therapist who is coming to play with you and knows that about you and plays a nice person, that can give you another opportunity to feel and do things that you didn't do before, and to desensitize yourself to that fear. So a lot of the work with traumatized people has to do with desensitizing them. But in order to desensitizing them, you have to expose them to the threat. So the work can be quite poignant and powerful and emotional, as all therapy can be.
I feel like we just had one right now. It's really I had a chance to. I've actually had a session done yesterday by Jamie Lynn McCuppin, And you know, obviously I saw 2 sessions this week already, and yeah, I gotta say, it's, you know, it's an amazing how the therapist has to be in it, but also directing it as well, and knowing what the client needs. I mean, that's like ultimate multitasking. I mean, what were some of the, I guess, problems developing this? You know, did you have to learn a new way? Because I know you were in as a therapist, and then you went, but you were always into theater. Like, how did you merge the two? How exactly did you do it?
Well, I was a drama therapist first. I went back to graduate school in psychology, but so I was hired at the Yale Psychiatric Institute as a drama person. That was my job title, to do theater with them, and not as a drama therapist. It just so happened that there was an art therapist and a dance therapist and a music therapist there, and after a little while, they said, "Well, you're the drama therapist," and I said, "Well, there is no such thing as drama therapy, so how could I be a drama therapist? And I don't really haven't been trained. There's no training in it, so whatever." And they said, no, you're a drama therapist. And that's how I became a drama therapist. I understand it's more expensive now to do that. But then, you know, I've always been interested in the intellectual aspects and scholarly aspects of the field, and philosophy, and in how the human being operates. And so I got more training, and then I became a therapist, a verbal therapist too. Spent many years doing that, and still see clients both in drama therapy and verbal therapy and in trauma treatment. Most cultures, we actually haven't run into any culture that says otherwise, basically implicitly believes that other people are dangerous, and getting close to somebody else is dangerous. So the idea of getting close to somebody must be dangerous. So if I suddenly, you know, get up out of the chair and walk toward you right now in the interview, and just walk close to you, you're going to feel like, that's weird, and why is he doing that, and what's going to happen? What's he going to do to me? So the key was having the therapist participate. So from many angles, this was viewed as a dangerous thing. And so, because in DVT, it becomes physical. And not always, but most people, physical interaction is a normal human activity. To slap somebody on the back, to bump up against each other. If you work with kids, they jump on your back, they play with you, they want you to grab them and capture them and have them get out. I mean, it's just a normal human mammal activity, is to have physical interaction. And we allow that in DVT. It's consensual, but it's allowed. So this freaked out everybody, including me. So I felt like I'm doing something wrong. This is scary. Is this appropriate? Even though the clients were initiating it and nothing terrible was happening, and it was a lot of fun, and we were playing. And you know, you see in improv all the time some physicality. It's normal, but I was very anxious about it. And it took me years, and with a lot of brave clients who were less afraid of it than I was, to realize that I can have a close, intimate, moral, ethical, respectful interaction with somebody while I'm in physical contact with them. And that there's nothing, it's just like having a conversation with somebody. I could insult you right now. I could verbally say terrible things to you. But how come we don't view verbal interaction as innately dangerous? Even though I could say all sorts of insulting things to you. But people feel that there would be, if we touch physically, that something terrible would happen for sure. That is just simply not true. And so I think when I learned that actually I had no interest in having sex with my clients, I had no interest in harming them, I had no interest in physically harming them, that I could participate with them in play, even as adults. And so at that point, then I think I slowly, gradually allowed myself to be able to do that. I saw that my students were able to do that, and that in fact, physical and emotional and verbal interaction with other people is not inherently dangerous. It is potentially dangerous, but no more so than like a verbal conversation, no more so than driving a car down the street, no more so than almost anything. And people still feel, because improv in general and improv in therapy is skirting around something that people do feel is dangerous, which is the lack of ability to predict the next moment that's coming. That is terrifying. People feel that improv is extremely dangerous. Now, I do a little presentation about bicycles when I'm training people. And bicycles are also unstable, as well as life. But the difference is, how many serious bicycle accidents take place in America each year? Tens of thousands. How many deaths from bicycle riding are there a year? Almost 10,000 a year in the United States of America. How many head injuries and serious physical injuries occur from bicycle accidents? It's like 30, 40,000. Okay? Does anyone telling you not to teach your kid to ride a bicycle? Do you feel when you've got a 10-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid that they should not be on the bicycle? No, you feel you need to be able to ride the bicycle. You're going to fall, you're going to skin your knee, and you have to be careful when you're out in traffic on a bicycle. Even though we know that 10,000 people are going to die. Last year, how many people died doing improv? I can tell you, zero people died doing improv last year. Now, I haven't done a full study. Maybe there's one. Nobody died. Did anyone have a head injury? Did anyone have like some kind of serious surgery, the results of improv? No. The worst that happened across the world is that some people's feelings got hurt and somebody cried. That happened. But people are saying, oh, don't do improv, but go ahead and ride a bike. So, excuse me. Football. I mean, it's horrific what's going on. So anyway, so there's a bias against this, but the truth is, the next moment in your life, which is completely unwritten, is actually a terrifying thing. So there is something to be afraid of, but not what people do to each other. Most people can play, most people can interact. When you contract with somebody to be your therapist, they actually are interested in helping you. And for the most part, it goes well. And are there hurt feelings? Yes. Are there misunderstandings? Yes. There is the occasional unethical therapist, verbal or any kind of therapist, who doesn't respect the boundary and engages in inappropriate sexual contact with their clients. And that's real, but that has nothing to do with improv. It has nothing to do with play. It's across the board, etc. So these are biases that we're all confronted with.
Dangerous, yeah. I think that's sums it up. But tell us about the upsides and maybe some of the studies or things that you know about where people have said, conclusively, improv is good.
Improv is good, and are you talking about improv in general, or just DVT, or what do you?
DVT, yeah, any of the drama therapy modalities that might, help people that they'd be afraid of. Like when I talked to that psychoanalyst,
Yeah.
said that sounds dangerous. What's something that you could go to this medical community that's saying that don't do that with your clients, don't do
Right.
DVT with your clients, you can't touch your clients, you can't do this. What do you show them? How do you show them? No, actually, I cured 50 people with PTSD. I mean, do you have those kind of numbers, or like what do you say to those people?
Right. Well, there's a whole before I answer that specifically, what's his name? Who's the gentleman who's got the Harlem Free Zone in New York? Yeah, I'm blanking on his name. Anyway, I won't go into that. Anyway, so the role of play with children has been studied more than almost any other topic. From the 1930s through 2000, there must be hundreds of studies done by psychologists and other people showing the benefit of play for children. Because that's established, there's less research on that now because we know that. And yet now, today, somebody might say, well, how do you know that that's going to be helpful to people? Well, because there were hundreds of studies done 70 years ago. We learned that 70 years ago. So there is no debate that play is helpful to the learning, the social and emotional adjustment of children and actually adults as well. And this has been established, and I can give you hundreds of references on this in the top journals. Nobody debates this anymore. There's so many reasons that that's true. And improv is just a form of play. More specifically for like specific programs that we have, for example, we have done a DVT with children in public schools now for about 12 years as part of our Miss Kendra program. And we have done measurable studies on children, rating before and after these sessions. And we have data on 15,000 sessions. 15,000 sessions where the child rated their level of stress before and after, and the drop is like precipitous within 15-20 minutes. Their internal sense of stress just collapses. And we have that on 15,000 sessions. And so, when other people ask me like, well, so have you shown anything, or this upsets kids to do this? And we say, no, it doesn't. We have data on 15,000 kids. Do you have data on 15,000 of what you do? Nobody does. So we can show people specifically to the kind of work that we're doing this does not upset kids. And in fact, it leads to a lot of positive results. And we've shown in the kind of work that we're doing with this Miss Kendra program, huge drops in suspensions, improvements in academic behavior, et cetera, et cetera. This tends to be helpful, but it doesn't actually, all those numbers we've never found shake the deeply felt bias that if you really let people do what they want and you sort of let them to express themselves, all hell will not break loose. And it goes back, I guess, to Pandora, which is the idea is if we unlock this box, all this crap is going to be coming out into the world. And they forget the end of that myth. They forget the end of the myth. Because at the end of Pandora's box, after all this other stuff comes out, the final thing that comes out is hope. Pandora's box is a positive story. And for a lot of the kids that we work with where hope is an issue, where they're feeling like they're up against huge systemic obstacles to their success, we find that opening the lid, allowing things to come out, allowing it to be messy, allow it to be fun, allow it to be, horrifying images of like swords and Jedi Knights and fighting and dying. Most of our therapists have to practice learning how to die. If you played with kids, you know that you get a weapon, they get a weapon, and only their weapon works, if you've noticed, which is that they kill you, and you try to kill them, and there's no effect. And so our therapists die. They're taught to make sure that they die each time that they're killed by the child, and in DVT, they're trained to die well, and to get into dying, and to do an Academy Award dying. And the kid will say, listen, no, get up, let's do it again. And we'll say, no, I'm not dead yet, let me die. And we make dying really cool, and at some point the kid says, oh, my turn. And they switch roles, because dying the way that we die, it looks a hell of a lot more fun than stabbing somebody over and over again. And so they give up that identification with the aggressor, and then they switch roles, and then suddenly your weapons work, suddenly your bullets and your guns and all that stuff work, and then down they go. And they're no longer afraid of being vulnerable, like they were in the original trauma. And we can help desensitize them to that. There's nothing wrong with not knowing what's going to happen in your life. 20 years from now, 5 years from now, a month from now, a day from now. There's nothing wrong with that, and it's kind of exciting, and people just carry over from the past into the next moment. And whether it's Colin working on Wait, Don't Tell Me, or a therapist, or people out on the street, we're just reminding ourselves of that fact. And it's fun, and it's amazing, and it's envy-producing. I mean, people will watch good improvisers, and it's just like, wow, I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to do that, and not knowing that they can do that, our society doesn't encourage it.
I'm gonna just change your battery here. All right, so the grand finale of this fabulous talk is, well, we've kind of talked about the blocks, we've kind of talked about the proof, we've talked about the process a little bit. I guess it all sounds good, it all sounds great. So someone told me that there's less than 1,000 licensed drama therapists in the whole country, the whole world?
Country.
The whole country. And there's 300 million people or so. That's a very small, and there's millions of psychologists, therapists, social workers. Does it really just speak to that few people, or are there not really that many people wanting to try it? Is there growth happening? Like, what's going on in terms of, like, that's a really small group of people. You have if there's only 1,000 drama therapists, you got 450 of them here, you have a pretty good turnout. I don't think any of those other professions at their national conference, they get, if there's 1 million of them, they're not getting 100,000 at the conference, I don't think. So, obviously, it's a super niche, super loyal group. Is it growing? What's happening with it? Where's drama therapy going? Where's DVT going?
Well, everything I've ever been really interested in, nobody else has been interested in. So I'm really the wrong person to ask about that. I don't know why, but that's been true. It's growing, drama therapy is growing. I think given the kind of huge disaffection a feeling of that the world is closing in on people, that we're the climate change, we're going to be drowning, the ambitions and dreams of being able to be a young person, and that the world is ahead of you. So this closing in that's happening is helping people realize that if that's happening, I've got to do something different. And they are seeing this, I think, expansion on social media and in other places of people doing really out-of-the-box kind of activities. Poetry jams and slams, musical things, flash mobs, improv. They're seeing more creative kind of things, and I think there has been an increase in interest in this kind of a thing, and in the end, kind of more of an acceptance that this is an option for people. So I would say that's a positive thing, and that we're going to see some growth in general kind of playing that's going to be going on, but not in a way that's going to, I do not expect it to take over, and be a majority of what people are doing, which would be helpful, but I don't have any. We are small. To be honest, even though everyone can play, obviously having theater training or play-based training helps people feel comfortable doing it. Moving around, moving your body, expressing yourself, dancing, singing, these kinds of things. Everyone appreciates this, but a lot of people feel uncomfortable. Many arts programs have been cut from educational training and schools, so there's even fewer kids who are being exposed to the arts than before, which may prevent a growth. So no, I don't see a change that will really be a change, but it's growing, and it's going to continue to grow, but in a very modest way. In most cultures, not all, but in most cultures, the need for practical attention to real problems trumps, sorry for the use of the word, playing around and enjoying oneself, which is viewed and it's attached to being lazy or having nothing to do, or it's like going way back to the beginning, that having sex for procreation is viewed as a positive, whereas masturbating, is viewed as a sin. And because masturbation leads to nothing, it's only pleasuring yourself. And so sometimes play, improv and stuff is viewed as like you're enjoying yourself, you're playing around, but nothing's really getting done. And so, stop playing with yourself, stop playing with your pencil, stop playing with your friend, stop recess, get to work. And so, and there's work to be done. So I go to work, and I'm not playing all the time. I play more than most people because some of my work is play, so I feel blessed. But, we can't minimize the reality, and in many cultures, unlike ours, where poverty and adversity and serious problems are just presented to everyone every day, to get water, to get food, to be able to sustain oneself, you can forgive them for not saying, oh, let's just, let's do improv. Even though nobody works 24 hours a day, so there's always time for improv. Always. And you get scientists, the most serious scientists, or all these people that work their butts off, Wall Street people, and then once they have gotten all their money and they retire, what do? They write poetry. They write a memoir when they talk about the little memories they had of their grandmother telling them stories, the puppet plays that they did, and it's all filled with poignancy, and that this is really what counts, and that, stopping and smelling the flowers was the appropriate thing to do, but they say that later, when in fact, How come they didn't do it during their careers? So I don't know. It's a problem. So we have a wonderful community. The drama therapy community is an awesome community filled with caring people that are fun and playful and bounce around. They're bouncy. The DVT community likewise, which is around the world. We have institutes around the world in DVT. And it's just a delight to be able to be with people that appreciate these small pleasures of life. And so, you know, it is what it is.
Thank you so much. This has
Great.
been really educational. All right, cut.